Hi and welcome back to Plastic Models by a Regular Dude and part 3 of the viewer's choice build, the Eduard M4A1 Sherman. We left off with in the last video, got the transmission cover completed and all of this step of the upper hull, some of the upper hull details, putting on the lower hull and putting the transmission cover in place. And this is what we've got. So all went well there. So next part, we start with the headlights and then the hatches. So as you can see here, I've already got parts cut out for everything because I didn't want to take a bunch of time doing that. So first we'll do the headlights, and they are pretty simple. The locator pins are kind of half moon shaped, so they'll be easy to put in place. I'll just make sure they're pretty vertical. One on each side. And as a real quick note, the last part, part 2, was 57 minutes long, and that seems kind of longish. So if that is too long, please note it in the comment section for this video. I'm going to try and keep this one a little bit shorter. I'm going to pay attention to the length of time I'm doing this. 57 minutes seems kind of lengthy. Now some of you may be fine with that, so just let me know what you think. All right, so the first thing we need to do here with the hatches, now all this detail here is interior detail. Okay, if you're gonna have the hatches closed, it's not really necessary with the exception of the periscope. You should probably have that in there. But I'm going to do one hatch open, I think. So I'm using I think I'm going to have the driver's side hatch open because I plan on using some figures on this kit. So I'm practicing on this one first because it's going to be closed to make sure everything works okay. So the first thing I had to do was there were a couple of, let me show you on the other hatch. Okay, on this hatch here, you can see there are some ejector pin marks here, here, and here. This one will be covered by this pad here. So these two need to be removed. They're very, very shallow, and I just used my curved blade and just scraped it and was able to get them removed. You can still see the faint ghost of it, but once there's paint on the primer and paint, it's going to be gone. All right, so the first thing I need to do, or that I want to do, is I got some Tamiya tape and I cut out a very small piece, and I'm using that to mask off the lens portion of this periscope. So you just kind of need to mess around with it till you get it the right size, and then you can put it in place, and that way whenever you paint everything, you won't paint over the lens part, which is kind of the cool thing about these being molded in clear. The thing is getting it off of the knife or tweezers. There we go. Okay, so hopefully when I get everything painted up, I won't forget that piece of tape is on there. So what you want to do is make sure you put one on the top lens and the bottom lens. Now I'm not going to do the bottom lens because again this one's going to be closed up, but on the other one I will definitely be putting a piece of tape in there. So I'm going to set that aside. Then cutting out these very, very small photo etch parts First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to glue this in place. This is the pad to keep the guys from bonking their noggins. So get that in place. Okay, just make sure it's lined up. Maybe even test fit it to make sure that the hatch will close with that in place. Okay, so I need to slide it this way a little bit. Like that, so it closes. Good deal. All right, so that part's done. Now we've got 2 photo etch parts, well actually 3, but 2 of them that I need to deal with now, and one of them is PE20, which is this grab handle looking thing, okay, and then there is PE48, which is this I think it's a locking strap. It goes down so it can so you can lock the hatch if need be. So the first thing I need to do is cut off this part in red here. So I'm just going to use my Tamiya cutter here and cut it as close as I can. Like that, and then very carefully trim the rest with my knife. Stuff like this, I don't really like to use a sander because you can sand off a little too much detail, except on the edge here. Okay, so that's good. All right, so I've got that. So that's ready to go here. And then there's also PE49, which is this ultra thin grab handle. So I think what I'm going to use in this case, I'm going to use my gel. Let's see, let's do the inside first. And this part, this goes hopefully you can see it. It's a really tiny part. Okay, that goes there. So I'm going to use the gel just because it was a little bit thicker and it'll give me a little bit of time to position it properly. Now I've already sanded these things except for this one here. And this one, this is the kind of stuff, it's kind of crucial that you just barely have that connection point hanging out, so you only get that without bending the part, which I've been successful. Okay, so I'm gonna get some of my gel here. Whoops. Sorry about that. Okay. All right, then carefully get some on there. And put that in place. Kind of get it evened out there. And let that set up just for a second. So let's take a look at that and see if it's okay. That's set up good. All right, so now I'm going to go ahead and put that into position there. And I'm going to use more gel. Just put it right on the edges there. Just make sure you have it facing the right direction. You want it facing forwards. Okay, so we got that. So I need another part. I need D11, which is the periscope cover. So we'll get one of those. And make sure that is cleaned up well. Okay. And make sure you get the hinges lined up, because there's a hinge on the back here. It goes in between two hinges on this rotating periscope cover. Okay, and then just a little bit of cement. Oh man, look at there. Ah. And that's what happens. Man, I blasted. All is not lost. So since I jacked that up, I'm gonna have to lightly sand this once it dries, because you can see it got some cement on there. Well, I don't do that often. That's frustrating. Now in a case like that, I probably should have used my gator's grip and put it on top of the periscope and then glued that cover in place, but I didn't, so Just have to keep that in mind for next time. Alright, so there's that. So the next part I need to do is this strap here. And I'm going to again use the gel. And just put it right on top of where I clean that off. Make sure it's smashed down in place good. Like that. And then let that dry for a minute. And then last and definitely not least, except in size, is this little teeny tiny handle. Ultra teeny tiny. Definitely using the gel on this one. Goes right here. So let's get a little bit of that there. Make sure it is vertical, and there you have it. Very harrowing experience indeed. Okay, so I'm going to set that aside. There's one more part, which is the spring, but I'm not going to put that in place until I actually glue the hatch onto the vehicle. So we'll just hang tight with that for a minute. We'll take a look at the other hatch and get that together. Alright, so I've got the hatch in place. Now the next part I need to put in is G12, which is a very small part of the hinge. It goes in like that. Okay. A little bit of cement in place like that. Okay, so then next part is that little teeny tiny spring. And this is something that you gotta kind of make sure is in position really good, because there's not much of a contact point there and you will have problems. With it flying off when you do your weathering, painting. Okay, what I did is I got that soft with cement, using my tweezers, kind of mashed it onto that connection point right there. So that is done. Let that dry up. So while that is doing that, I'm going to go ahead and assemble the other hatch. For the fenders, what I did, I've been test fitting it, and I've discovered that I needed to thin this part out a little bit to make it fit a little easier. You've got this ridge right here on the inside of the hull that lines up with the fender, and it matches up, you know, really well. But this part here that was glued on earlier, according to the instructions, might be better served. You might be better off installing that after you get the fender part on. It just seems like it would fit and work a little better and be easier to fit that part there, but it, you know, it fits really good. I just think it might be a little bit easier if it were done the other way. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cement this part first in here and let that cure up really well on both sides, and then once it is I'm going to check something here. There's a little bit of a burr right there, so I'm going to get that off there, see if that helps. Seems a little bit better. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cement this on there. I'm probably going to let it dry overnight before I try and monkey it around there, and then get that in position there. And it'll probably work a lot better once the final drive is on there. So I'm going to do that on both sides. See, same thing there. Probably gonna have to thin that out just a little bit to get it fit better. So I'm gonna do that and then get those glued on. All right, I got them on there. This is got adhesive, got cement in there really well. Gonna set it aside, let it dry. While that is drying overnight, I'm gonna go ahead and work on the rear deck. All right, for the rear deck, I need parts F8, PE30, F20, D4, D7, and then PE57, which is another couple of small pieces of chain. So I've already got the, since I already did it, you know, in a previous step, the same thing. I've got the covers, the filler covers in place with the little bits of chain. So the next thing I need to do is I need to put this screen in place, and it shows that it goes on here. According to this, that PE piece is sandwiched in between this part and this part here. So I'm going to take a look here and see how it fits before I cement anything together. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to glue this in place with this here gator glue so I can move it around a bit, because I sure don't want it to stick without it being in the right spot. Yeah, because it shows the corners fitting on these pegs. Whoops. These pegs here, and they line up with this peg here. So let's put a little bit of this gator stuff on here. That. And then I want to make sure that I center it as closely as possible. Like that. That looks pretty good. So I'm going to let that dry over there before I attach it to that panel there. So I'm going to set those aside. So getting back to these fenders here, I've got those firmly attached, and what I did using my ever faithful X-Acto clamps, I clamped them down tight like that, put the cement, let them dry overnight. So I wanted to make sure they were really on there well. So let's see, that takes care of the front part. This part I'm going to let ride for a minute while it dries. So I'm going to start putting some of these other details on. Now I was going to use this Armor Research Company periscope guards for the back, but the ones that are in the kit are not quite correct for, and you know, it probably wouldn't really matter that much, but you know, I'm gonna stick to the instructions, because F23, this one here, the ones that come in my photo etch set resemble this right here, but the ones that my marking option calls for is this one here. It's got a little extra brace on the back, so I'm going to have to use the kit ones. And as I said in one of my earlier videos, these parts are really fine, so it's not going to be that big a deal to use the kit supplied ones. They're not real thick. You know, like Tamiya, theirs can be kind of thick, especially their older kits. The newer kits look pretty good, but their older kits, these things can be really thick. But on this kit, they look really nice, so I think I'm going to use these. So I'm going to cut these out, as well as the tail lights, C33 and 32. I'm going to get those cleaned up and get them ready to glue into place. Okay, I got the one of the tail lights in place, and there is C32 for the right side, C33 for the left side. I looked at them, I couldn't really see a difference, but you know, I'm doing them according to the way it says. So the next thing I need to do is get this thing cleaned up, and man, I find these things amazingly hard to hold on to. They are so stinking tiny, it is unbelievable. But I want to make sure that the little flashy edge is gone, and that the sprue attachment points are cut off. Okay, so the nice thing is there's a couple of real tiny bumps there and there, and the nice thing is they fit on the inside of each side of this loop. So you can set it in place can hold on to the bleeding thing. And it'll rest in place so you can cement it. If all else fails, use your fingers. So just make sure you have the front edges lined up. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to do one side at a time. And make sure it's lined up. Okay. And it's always a good idea to get off as much of the excess as you can, because you don't want a big old blob of cement flowing out, because this little brush holds a lot of cement and you really don't want to get too much on there, but you'll have it rolling all over the place. Okay, so then do a little bit here and a little bit here, and then just kind of mash it into place very gently. Okay, and there's a little bit of a burr right here I'm going to have to take care of once it dries good. So that's that one. So I'm going to go ahead and do the other one and then come back and start working on the other parts. Alright, the light covers are on and dried, light guards I should say. I've got the screen was dry, so I've got that in place. Now I just need to put a little bit of cement on here. Get that dry. Okay, so I'm going to put that in place, and that goes here like that. And then part F28, which is this one right here, that cleaned up a little bit. That was a sloppy cut on my part. All right, and that goes there. Like that. Let's put a little right there at the hinges. All right, so that takes care of that. So the only other part left, are the tools, which includes a bunch of photo etch. So there's a lot of photo etch and it's smaller stuff. So I'm going to call this video quits right here. finishing this page except for that, because I'm going to do this as a separate video all on its own, because there's a lot of stuff on here that needs to be dealt with. So thanks for joining me here on Plastic Models by a Regular Dude, and if you have any questions or comments, suggestions, anything, please post them below in the comments, and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. So until next time, thanks for joining me here on the Viewer's Choice build, and I will see you all later.